In Conway, Arkansas, the fading sunset cast long, lazy shadows, swallowing the streets in an ominous gloom. Detective James Adler sat in his weather-beaten car parked across from the Stygian Sapphire, a pulsating nightclub at the heart of town. His rugged face was a patchwork of lines and contours, a testament to a life steeped in relentless pursuits and profound losses. He absent-mindedly traced the edges of an old photo of three children, two of which were frozen in youthful gaiety, their smiles bright and uncomplicated. The third child, he noticed, had a somber cast to his young face, a premature weight of seriousness that sat uncomfortably on his childish features. This third child was Adler himself, the other two, ghosts of a past marred by tragedy. The radio murmured in the background, a low, monotonous drone of Conway's minutiae. His heavy-lidded eyes remained fixed on the club, its neon blue sign splintering the darkness, attracting all kinds of souls like moths to a flame. Inside those walls lay a shadowy underbelly that was whispering for his attention, a world he intended to unmask. Shutting off the car engine, he crossed the street and stepped into the Stygian Sapphire, surrendering to the heady cocktail of sweat, alcohol, and raucous laughter. The club was alive with a reckless vitality that washed across his senses. Yet beneath the veneer of revelry, he discerned an underlying layer of unease. The eyes that met his were cautious, their smiles a beat too slow. Approaching the bar, he struck up a conversation with the grizzled bartender. "You see many new faces in here, Hank?" he asked, his gaze scanning the crowd. The bartender gave him a long, measured look before responding, "Detective, in this place, it's not the new faces you need to worry about. It's the old ones." As he pondered the cryptic reply, a figure detached itself from the shadows, sliding onto the bar stool next to him. A woman, her face an inscrutable mask, her eyes holding the ancient knowledge of the stars themselves. "The moon is weeping tonight, Detective," she whispered, her voice a melody of dread and mourning. He raised a questioning eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "Sometimes," she began, her voice low, "it weeps for the children of Conway." With that, she left him with his thoughts swirling in the din of the nightclub. Outside, the world was shrouded in a nocturnal silence, and somewhere in the distance a hound howled, a mournful lament that echoed the detective's brewing apprehension. Unseen by any eye, a sinister shadow twisted and convulsed, mirroring the slow churn of terror that was beginning to take root in the heart of Conway. The thick dawn mist swallowed the streets, a spectral veil that bore the silent promise of untold secrets. Adler awoke in his modest lodgings, the taste of the previous night's peculiar encounter still lingering, the cryptic warning of the woman echoing in his ears. A shadow had been cast, painting his world in hues of dread and suspicion. Pulling on a worn jacket, he found himself drawn to the Stygian Sapphire, a beacon amid the fog-drenched streets. He was greeted by a different beast in the harsh light of day. Devoid of the nightly revelers, it was silent, save for the discordant hum of the cleaning crew, their faces mirroring the dull hue of the morning. A conversation with Hank, the bartender, unearthed some disturbing threads. "Some folks round here," he began, running a rag over the polished counter, "they've got tastes." "Tastes?" Adler queried, his eyes narrowing. "Old traditions," Hank responded, his voice barely a whisper. "Things that ain't meant for city folk." His suspicions aroused, he began to dissect the underbelly of the town. The investigation was punctuated by tense, whispered conversations, guarded exchanges in dim-lit corners, and anxious glances shot his way. Each interaction added another piece to a puzzle that grew darker with each revelation. One evening, he found himself at the town library, the ancient tomes whispering their lore. An eccentric librarian guided him through the annals of Conway's history, through stories of a clandestine cult whose practices were rooted in antiquity. The word sanguine appeared time and again, associated with rituals and rites. The week drew to a close with an unsettling discovery. In the early hours of a windswept morning, he chanced upon a chilling scene at the outskirts of the town, a field littered with animal bones, each meticulously stripped of flesh, their marrow hollowed out with a chilling precision that defied any natural predator. A nauseating realization settled in his heart, linking the pieces together in a horrifying image. As he stood among the field of bones, the wind carrying away his whispered curses, the horror of his findings started to dawn upon him. The chilling whisperings of sanguine rites, the enigmatic warnings of the nightclub patron, the grotesque field of stripped bones, they painted a terrifying tableau of the darkness that clung to Conway. As the first streaks of dawn painted the sky, he knew that the next chapter of his investigation would lead him deeper into the abyss of Conway's horrifying secret. In the haunting embrace of twilight, the small town of Conway sank beneath a cloak of uneasy anticipation. A primal sense of fear began to manifest itself, gnawing at the edges of Adler's consciousness. He felt the invisible tendrils of the town's secret creeping into his psyche, wrapping him tighter with each horrifying revelation. One night, he found himself drawn again to the Stygian sapphire. The pulse of music was oddly subdued, the patrons' laughter hushed. He felt their eyes on him, the weight of their shared secret forming a tangible barrier between them and him. Beneath the throb of music, he caught a haunting melody, an undercurrent of an ancient, forgotten language that clawed at his mind. It was a hymn, a litany echoing through the annals of time, reverberating through the club like the steady heartbeat of some colossal, slumbering beast. The patrons' eyes glazed over, entranced, their bodies swaying in unison with the eldritch rhythm. And then, amidst the euphoria, the club's doors swung open. A procession of hooded figures entered, cradling a grotesque bounty in their arms. His heart pounded in his chest as the horrifying truth unfolded before his eyes, a feast of raw, bloody flesh. His mind spun with a terrifying realization. The bone field, the sanguine rites, the unspoken warnings, the haunting hymn, they all pointed to a single horrifying truth. A cult of cannibals lurked in the heart of Conway. The chilling spectacle sent a shiver crawling down his spine, the horror of a tangible entity constricting his breath. He forced himself to stay, to watch, to commit every detail to memory. The patrons partook in the feast, their ecstasy mirrored in their grotesque revelry. He swallowed the bile rising in his throat, his heart hammering against his ribcage. Emerging into the cold dawn, the taste of terror still fresh on his tongue, he knew the depth of the abyss he was poised to plunge into. His path was now clear. He had to confront the cult and face their macabre rituals. Darkness blanketed the town of Conway, an oppressive weight that bore down on Adler with a relentless intensity. Each shadowed alley, every quiet corner, seemed to echo with an insidious whisper, inviting him further into its twisted depths. His dreams became plagued with cryptic visions, haunting specters of cannibalistic feasts and dancing shadows. The star-studded sky morphed into a sea of hungry eyes, their gaze piercing through the veil of his sanity. These were no mere nightmares. He recognized them for what they were, the nascent tendrils of cosmic horror beginning to infiltrate his psyche. One evening, while navigating the labyrinthine streets of Conway, he felt an uncanny sense of being followed. A chill crept up his spine as he caught sight of a figure lurking in the periphery, a silhouette that seemed to flicker in and out of existence. The figure bore an uncanny resemblance to the mysterious woman from the nightclub, her cryptic words now ringing with a more ominous undertone. His days were filled with tense confrontations and veiled threats. The townsfolk, once merely wary, now stared at him with open hostility. He was a foreign element, a disruptor in their deeply entrenched, horrifying traditions. One night, he received an invitation, a delicately crafted note bearing no name, only an address and a time. It was an invitation to a place at the heart of Conway's secret, a location thought to be the cult's sacred ground. He understood the risks, but he also knew it was his only chance to expose the monstrous reality lurking beneath the facade of this quaint town. He arrived at the specified location at the stroke of midnight, the eerie stillness sending shivers down his spine. He felt a grim resolution settle over him as he ventured into the abandoned structure, the building echoing with the ghost of ancient rites and forgotten horrors. Adler knew he was stepping into the jaws of madness, walking into a trap meticulously laid out by the cult. But he also recognized the necessity of his sacrifice. As the door closed behind him, sealing his fate, he felt a semblance of peace. The midnight hour fell over Conway, its silence a haunting requiem for the night's eerie solemnity. Adler stood within the heart of the cult's sanctuary, the marrow-chilling cold seeping into his very bones. He felt the shroud of an inescapable dread descend upon him, the specter of the endless night wrapping its cold embrace around his heart. The chamber was bathed in a ghostly pallor, flickering shadows dancing across the time-worn stone. He could discern traces of the archaic rites, symbols etched into the stone floor, the heavy scent of dried blood hanging in the air, the lingering echo of ancient chants that seemed to seep from the very walls. A procession emerged from the depths of the sanctuary, their hooded figures a nightmarish tableau under the dim light. The woman from the nightclub led them, her eyes reflecting the abyssal darkness that shrouded the cult. Her lips parted, and from them flowed the eldritch hymn he had heard at the Stygian Sapphire. The haunting melody filled the room, the ancient language curling around his mind, tightening its grip on his sanity. "Welcome, detective," her voice rang out, the sound reverberating against the stone. "You sought the truth. Now behold." An offering was brought forth, a human form, trussed and hooded. His blood ran cold as the hood was removed to reveal a face twisted in fear. It was Hank, the bartender, his eyes pleading for a salvation he knew would not come. The ritual commenced, a horrifying spectacle that gripped his soul with an iron fist. The air filled with the scent of blood and terror, the echoes of Hank's screams bouncing off the stone walls. Despite his horror, he found himself unable to look away, entranced by the macabre dance unfolding before him. He felt his sanity teetering on the edge of an abyss, the horrifying reality of Conway threatening to shatter his mind. The shadows grew longer, the night endless, and he realized he was no longer an outsider to this horror. He was now a part of it, swallowed completely by madness. His death did not come as a surprise. As the cultists turned towards him, their bloody hands reaching out, he felt no fear. He was an offering to the cosmic horrors, a willing sacrifice to expose the hidden terror of Conway. As the cold steel cut through his flesh, his last thoughts were not of fear, but of an eerie peace. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed our content, show your support with a like and subscribe, and stay notified by hitting the bell icon. Expect more cosmic horror from Eldritch Tales Factory, and feel free to explore our other stories. See you in the next video.